Hey guys, tonight we're lighting a soft, crackling fire. Not the kind you roast marshmallows over, but the mythological kind, smuggled straight out of Olympus and into humanity's fumbling little hands. You're going to become Prometheus, the titan who kick-started human civilization with a flick of flame and a handful of cooking advice he probably should have kept to himself. You're standing on the edge of a misty mountain ridge. Behind you, Olympus, where the gods lounge in divine silk robes arguing about olive oil grades. Below you, humankind, a newly sculpted mess of meat and curiosity, trying to invent pants and getting distracted by shiny rocks. You hold fire cupped in your palms, warm, flickering, promising. This is your big idea. It's what's going to change everything. Or so you think. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are Prometheus, one of the Titans. Older than Zeus, older than most things with names, and definitely older than you feel these days. Your joints ache a little, not because of age, but because of the sheer weight of responsibility you keep voluntarily dragging around like a fashionable boulder. It's morning on Mount Othrys. You're not exactly in a rush. You stretch. You scratch behind your ear with one long, lazy sigh. You check your to-do list. The first item, check on humans. Again. You mutter something about how your brother Prometheus should have handled this already. He's the afterthought guy. Literally, that's what his name means. You'd expected him to manage the human project with a bit more foresight. But no, you sigh, tear off a bite of ambrosia toast, and float down to earth. There they are, the humans, naked, cold, trying to slap warmth out of two sticks like sad percussionists in an orchestra no one asked for. You rub your temples. These beings are supposed to reflect the glory of Olympus, and right now they look more like damp squirrels arguing over moss. So you decide to help, again. You go back home to Mount Olympus where the gods are pretending not to notice you. Technically, you're not really supposed to be up here anymore, what with the Titans being on Zeus' eternal do not invite list. But you walk in anyway, casual-like, trying to blend in by complimenting Hera's new cloud drapes and asking Apollo how the lyre sales are going. Fire, of course, is strictly god tier, a celestial invention contained only within the golden torches of Olympus. Zeus keeps it close. He's paranoid about power, and with good reason. His father did eat him once. But you know where they keep the fire. The gods are lounging, probably too drunk on nectar to notice you slip away. You tiptoe past Dionysus, who's explaining the emotional benefits of wine to a shrub. You edge past Ares, who is sparring with a coat rack. No one sees you steal it, just a flicker of fire. You tuck it into a fennel stalk, because apparently in ancient myth, fennel makes a decent thermos, and you sneak off like a teenager who's borrowed Zeus's car keys. You descend again to the mortal world. They're still trying to make warmth by hugging each other awkwardly. One guy is blowing on a rock. You feel slightly offended. You bend down, crack open the fennel stalk, and there, a flicker, a breath of warmth. The humans stare at it like you've just produced a dancing unicorn. One brave soul sticks a finger in it. Immediate regret. It begins. The first fire, and it's weirdly comforting. They gather around it. They coo. They poke things into it. Someone immediately tries to cook a squirrel. You wince, but say nothing. Soon the smoke begins to curl into the sky. Historians still argue whether this moment, the mythical gift of fire, actually marks a collective cultural memory of early combustion, or something more allegorical, a symbol of intellect, ambition, and probably the birth of unpaid overtime. But standing there watching the warmth spread, you feel it. This is going to change them. You just don't know how much yet. They look up at you with wide eyes and grateful shivers, and because you can't help yourself, you add, "Also, you should try boiling roots. Makes them softer. Maybe throw in a rock or two for flavor." And thus, fire is given to mankind. Also, prehistoric soup. Back on Olympus, you hear a distant thunder roll, a crackle. Zeus sneezes, maybe in your direction. You ignore it. Down here, the humans are celebrating. They roast, toast, and boast. They invent warmth, cooking, and the very first, "Oops, we burned it." They name the fire. They dance around it. They accidentally catch a bush on fire and call it progress. And you, Prometheus, step back and smile. You linger longer than you should. There's something almost hypnotic about watching humans discover fire like it's a brand new toy. They're wide-eyed, soot-smudged, poking at it with twigs and the occasional toe, learning very quickly that fire is both friend and flaming disciplinarian. A small child offers the fire a leaf as tribute. Another tries to roast what appears to be a lizard on a stick. There is a collective cheer followed by a collective cough. Burnt lizard, it turns out, is an acquired taste. But as you stand among them, invisible to their senses, you feel proud? Nervous? Probably both, like a teacher who just handed their class a box of matches and said, "Be creative." Then, inevitably, the questions begin. They don't ask you out loud, but you can hear them thinking. Can fire be shaped? Can it be tamed? What else can it do? And most importantly, what happens if we add more lizards? You try to steer them gently, whisper suggestions in dreams, nudge their hands as they cook their roots and tubers. You even inspire someone to drop salt into boiling water just to see what happens. Spoiler, it's delicious. Still, you know this can't last. Olympus is always watching, even when it's pretending not to care. Zeus, for all his kingly flair, is not known for subtlety, or forgiveness, or reasonable punishments. And you've already broken several divine ordinances just by showing up. By helping? By caring. So you go back, just to check in. Olympus, as always, smells like ego and jasmine. The gods lounge in impossible furniture, drinking impossible wine and gossiping in impossible metaphors. You slip into the edge of the throne room where the 12 recline. Your brother, Prometheus, is nowhere to be seen, probably napping in a hollow tree, unaware that the future is unraveling like a loose toga. You try to look casual, like you haven't done anything potentially eternal sentence-worthy. Zeus is in the middle of a rant about clouds, or goats, possibly both. His thunderbolt is being used as a toothpick. Hera isn't listening. She's focused on carving a tiny swan into a grape. Ares is arm wrestling himself. No one seems to notice you, but someone does. Athena from across the room raises an eyebrow. She's sharp, always was. You two never exactly got along. Too many brains in one room, but there's a flicker of something in her expression. Curiosity, maybe, or warning. You walk faster. You leave Olympus again. Your fennel stalk empty now. The fire is no longer yours, it belongs to them, the humans, and they are making excellent use of it. Sort of. It's only been a few days, but already they've built new huts with cooked mud, lit cave walls with torches, and invented the first burnt pancake. One group is experimenting with baked apples. Another is yelling because someone just scorched their foot. Fire is changing everything, and with it, cooking. Historians still argue whether early cooking rituals emerged as sacred rites or happy accidents. One theory suggests that our love for grilled meat predates even organized language. Humans bonding over fire-roasted roots and mutually burned tongues. You watch them cook and mess up a lot. Someone tries to fry fish in a bowl made of bark. Another drops a stone into a stew and calls it flavor enhanced. You raise an eyebrow when they start adding insects for crunch. But the food starts to get better. They learn about boiling, roasting, smoking. They build racks for drying herbs, mostly weeds, but the intent is there. They share, they trade, they pass down recipes with hand signs and grunts, and you realize cooking is their first language. It's not just about fire anymore, it's about gathering. There's an old woman, wrinkled, barefoot, with 2 teeth and a magnificent stick. She runs the kitchen in her cave like a goddess, slapping hands away from the fire and muttering incantations over broth. You're pretty sure she just cursed a mushroom, but the soup tastes divine. You watch her, fascinated. She adds a dash of crushed leaf, a smidge of wild honey, and... Was that crushed beetle? You're impressed. Maybe horrified, but definitely impressed. Then the humans start building clay pots, tiny ovens, flat stones arranged in a circle to evenly distribute heat. It's crude, but it's also genius. And you start to get a little cocky. You whisper more ideas. Stone griddles, hot ash baking. You nudge a teenager toward the first grill. Someone tries to deep fry a snail, you regret everything. Still, their joy is infectious. You can't help but smile as they invent morning porridge and argue over whether snail broth is an acquired taste or a prank. They're experimenting, innovating, making meals into memories. And you, the titan who gave them fire, are quietly watching it all unfold like a sleepy god of kitchen fails and occasional brilliance. Then one night, as the humans sleep and the fire crackles low, you feel it. A shift in the air, a weight behind the wind. Something divine. You wake up to thunder, not the soft, rolling kind that lulls mortals to sleep, but the divine kind. The sort that cracks the sky open like an egg and makes trees lean away in fear. Olympus isn't exactly subtle when it's angry. You stretch your shoulders, they pop. That can't be a good sign. The fire still burns in the mortal camp below, dim and steady, wrapped in sleep and leftover broth. A few coals glow like sleepy eyes. You sigh, brush off your robe, and begin the slow climb back toward trouble. Olympus is never far when Zeus wants to be dramatic. Today it looms larger, taller. You notice more guards at the cloud gates, not that they're useful. Most of them are decorative. One is arguing with a particularly aggressive goose. You breeze past. You step into the main hall and immediately feel it. The tension. The gods sit like statues arranged in perfect disapproval. Hestia is quietly fanning herself. Poseidon drums a finger on a puddle. Ares has his helmet on upside down, probably for intimidation. And Zeus. He's smiling, never a good sign. Prometheus, he says, dragging out your name like it tastes bad. Been busy, have we? You clear your throat. Consider a dozen lies. Settle on the least terrible truth. I may have made a small adjustment. A small adjustment, he repeats, rising. You gave fire to mortals, fire which I declared sacred. Fire which you smuggled in a fennel stalk like a picnic snack. And oh yes, cooking tips. He says it like it's a slur. You try not to laugh. It's not going well. He gestures to Hermes, who pulls out a scroll like an overexcited intern. Reports include flame-wielding humans, edible root stews, and 1 case of spice snail porridge. You wince. Zeus paces now, cloak billowing. Do you realize what you've done? Fire is not just heat, it's progress, it's rebellion, it's midnight snacks and metallurgy. You nod. Exactly. He points a thunderbolt at you. Hera rolls her eyes. You're being dramatic again, dear. It's my job to be dramatic, Zeus huffs. Historians still argue whether Zeus's reaction in this moment symbolizes divine caution or divine insecurity, whether he feared mortal evolution or simply hated being left out of the dinner invite. Regardless, you're in trouble. Zeus announces your punishment with a grin. You like mountains, you'll love chains. You blink. Wait, chains? A rock, he continues, voice rising like a crescendo of divine overkill. At the edge of the world, you'll be bound to it. Forever. And every day an eagle will feast on your liver, which will grow back, so it can happen again. You stare. That seems excessive. Hermes coughs. The Eagles Union approved it. You glance around for sympathy. Hades shrugs. Athena looks vaguely amused. Dionysus raises a cup and mumbles, "Tough break, bro." Then the chains appear, forged by Hephaestus himself. Golden, unbreakable, humming with divine energy and a faint smell of roasted chestnut. He doesn't make ugly chains. Of course he doesn't. They don't even let you finish your drink. You're dragged across sky and cloud, past cities and silence, toward the bleakest cliff in existence. The wind howls like an unpaid intern. Below, a lonely sea crashes against stone. They fasten the chains tight. They wrap around your wrists, ankles, even your middle. You can't move, can't sit. Just wait. And then you hear it. A screech, sharp, hungry, very punctual. The eagle. You crane your neck. It's massive, wingspan like a storm, eyes glinting with bureaucratic precision. It lands with the elegance of a brick and wastes no time. Its beak gleams. Your liver winces. You close your eyes. This is going to become a routine. The eagle gets to work, and you begin your eternity. Oddly enough, you don't scream. Not really. There's pain, sure, but it's distant. Like someone pulling your taxes out through your side. And you're immortal, which means the drama resets every day. But still, it's a lot. You try to focus on something else. The clouds, they drift lazily by, uncaring. You imagine a recipe for eagle stew, purely hypothetical. You think of the humans probably inventing seasoning at this very moment. You regret the fennel, and then day fades into night. The eagle leaves full and satisfied. Your liver regrows like some kind of cursed salad bar. You close your eyes again, waiting. The stars flicker above like tiny disapproving witnesses. You can't move, you can't sleep, but you can think. And slowly a new thought forms. Was it worth it? And despite everything, you smile? Yes. Yes, it was. You lose track of how many days pass. It's not like they give you a sundial or a wall calendar up here on Mount Misery. You count by eagle visits. One bird, one day. If you're lucky, it's the quiet eagle. If you're not, it's the one who hums off key while it works. The worst part isn't even the liver thing anymore, it's the boredom. Immortality comes with some perks, but endless sky and unblinking starlight tend to lose their charm around the 600th viewing. Still, the humans keep you going. You think about them constantly, those awkward little fire users. Are they okay? Have they invented something nice like chairs yet? Or soup that doesn't involve bark? You focus, trying to reach them in your thoughts. You picture the camp, the glow, the hiss of roasting roots. And it works, kind of. Your perspective shifts. You're still chained to the rock. Don't worry, Zeus is thorough. But your vision stretches like you're watching memories projected on the clouds. You see them, the humans. And they're cooking, a lot. Not just roots anymore, there's meat. Roasted, stewed, even smoked over green wood. They've figured out how to hang pots over the fire using clever branches. They're turning flat stones into baking surfaces. Someone just invented Oops All Crispy bread. They're hosting feasts now, too. The fire isn't just a tool, it's a gathering place. It flickers at the heart of each camp like a quiet pulse. And the meals, loud, messy, glorious, half laughter, half chewing. Someone tells a joke about a goat and a turnip. You don't get it, but you're proud anyway. And then rituals? Some groups start tossing herbs into the flames while they sing. Others whisper thanks to the fire before each meal, tapping the ground 3 times with a stick. A few draw symbols in ash on their foreheads. It's not religion, not yet, but it's close. Historians still debate whether early fire rituals were sacred or simply superstition. Was it reverence, fear, or just a cultural habit born out of habit and smoke? Whatever it was, it's working. The fire isn't just helping them survive, it's giving them identity. And with that identity comes experimentation. You see someone wrap meat in leaves and bury it under hot coals. Someone else uses a carved turtle shell to make soup. There's even a trial run of something that might be dumplings, depending on your definition of food. They make mistakes, of course. One group tries cooking mushrooms that glow in the dark. Turns out they glow on the way out, too. Another sets a cooking pit too close to a tree and accidentally invents the concept of fire safety. But overall, they're thriving. And they remember you. They don't know your name exactly, not in words, but they pass your story on in gesture, in song, in smoke. You become the figure who came down from the stars with fire in his hands. They mimic your gift-giving motion when lighting a new fire. They carve fennel stalks into totems, not knowing why it matters. Just that it does. You shift on your rock, chains clinking softly. It's hard not to smile. The eagle, returning for another snack, frowns at you mid-peck. Really? It seems to say. You ignore it. You're too busy watching a new human innovation. The campfire argument. A group of elders is having a spirited discussion about whether roasting meat on a vertical stick makes it more tender. One insists the stick should spin. Another says the angle of the fire changes everything. A third falls asleep mid-sentence, face down in a fur blanket. This is how cuisine begins, with stubborn opinions and barely edible results. A young girl, no older than 10, tosses a pinch of salt into the fire before stirring her clay pot. The gesture is so natural, so confident, you feel your heart swell. She doesn't know what you did for her. She doesn't need to. She's living the result. And somewhere beyond the mountain, a new recipe is being passed down. Slow-cooked boar, bark broth on the side, and a warning not to lick the ladle while it's still in the fire. You almost laugh out loud. Almost. The eagle clicks its beak in protest. You sigh. Fine, you mutter. Take your portion. You brace yourself as it digs in. As usual, it hurts, but less now. Or maybe you're just distracted. Maybe you've started to understand that pain doesn't get the final word. Humanity does. Because they're still using your fire. Still adapting, still cooking. And you, bound to a rock for eternity, find a strange comfort in knowing that somewhere someone is figuring out how to make fire-roasted chestnuts taste just a little better than yesterday. You close your eyes for a moment, just long enough for the wind to change. When you open them again, you're watching yet another feast unfold around a flame that crackles with pride. The humans are getting good at this. There's a whole ceremony involved now. Someone sings, someone stirs, someone dramatically fans the smoke away from their eyes as if it personally insulted them. The scene is different from before. New terrain, new faces, but the fire is still the same. It dances like it remembers you. Tonight's menu includes what looks like wild onions, roasted squirrel, and something that might be mushroom-stuffed roots. Someone's even got a flatbread going, and you swear you hear the words, 2 pinches of salt, passed down the circle. You chuckle softly. Somewhere, Zeus is fuming. Which is fitting, because it's around now that the gods start to notice the human kitchen parties. Not just Zeus, all of them. It starts with a scent. Ambrosia's nice and all, but suddenly Olympus smells something else. Something smoky, savory, real. The kind of smell that seeps into hair, into clothing, into memory. And gods, being nosy, follow their noses. They descend in quiet forms, mist, animals, the occasional smug breeze. They hover, invisible, watching humans stir pots and burn fingers and debate whether that root is edible or very not edible. And they're confused. These aren't sacrifices. No one's chanting their names. No one's pouring wine into the fire for Apollo or building weird shrines for Aphrodite made out of goat cheese. These are just meals. Shared. Laughed over. Celebrated. Unritualistic. Yet undeniably sacred. Hestia is the first to really notice. Goddess of hearth and home, she drifts quietly among the fire circles and lingers longer than she should. She sees a child nestle close to a fire's warmth. A mother blowing gently on hot stew. A father carving a wooden spoon with more care than most statues get. It touches her. She doesn't tell the others. But they begin to notice the shift. The humans are bonding over fire in ways even the gods hadn't predicted. They're telling stories now, long ones, winding tales about stars and rivers and talking wolves. They lean in as the flames rise and fall, and the food passes hand to hand like a prayer. Even Dionysus drops by one evening and tries to sneak a sip of soup. He burns his tongue and leaves a review in the form of a vine that grows spicy berries near the fire pit. No one knows why, but they become a hit. You, meanwhile, are stuck, still chained, still liver deprived. But now the visions come easier. You don't have to reach for them. They come to you, like postcards, human snapshots. A new stew here, a weird burnt cake there. One community starts cooking with heated stones and calls it fire bread. Another discovers fermenting. That gets interesting, and somehow against all odds, they start to thrive. You're proud, you're wistful, but also annoyed. Because the gods, they're jealous. They don't say it, of course, not out loud. But you see the way Zeus sniffs the wind more often now. How Hera squints down at mortals with a little less judgment and a little more curiosity. Ares even tries to start a war cult down there and gets distracted by a particularly good stew. The truth is, the gods like being worshipped. And humans? They're too busy learning how to roast root vegetables properly to build temples just yet. So Zeus calls a meeting. It's the kind of meeting only Olympus could host. Floating chairs, echoing chambers, and way too many robes for the temperature. You attend only by rumor, chained but not out of the loop. He complains, loudly, about fire, about cooking, about you. He's mad that the humans have something divine that didn't come with a rule book or a shrine, that they found joy without direction, that your gift continues to give, and he can't seem to take it back. Maybe we should punish them, he mutters at one point, eyeing a thundercloud. Hermes, who's been quietly munching on something that suspiciously smells like mortal flatbread, says, "They're just cooking, boss." "A little too well," Zeus growls. Historians still debate whether this divine jealousy was the catalyst for later mythological punishments, whether fire led directly to Pandora, or if Zeus just needed an excuse to remind mortals who was in charge. Either way, it's clear now. This wasn't just about fire. It was about independence. And the humans? They're showing too much of it. So Zeus broods. The gods mumble. And somewhere, at the edge of the world, your chains grow just a little tighter. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Because the war between gods and fire-roasted goat isn't over. It's just getting started. You start to notice a pattern. The eagle comes and goes. Your liver regenerates with frustrating punctuality. The chains creak every time you breathe. But it's not all repetition. There's a rhythm now. A subtle tempo to the chaos you've created. And in the mortal world, that rhythm becomes music. No, really. You're watching from your eternal cliffside seat, and someone down there just invented a cooking song. A simple chant, nothing lyrical, but they sing it every time they stir their communal pot. It goes something like, turn the stew, don't let the goat fur in it. You admire the commitment. Soon others pick it up. They add hand claps. They argue over verses. It becomes tradition. You chuckle despite the sharp eagle beak currently nibbling on your insides. There's something deeply funny about how humans keep finding joy, even when it involves burned hands and bad seasoning. They invent spoons only to forget where they put them. They declare one person firekeeper, and within a week, that person is both honored and blamed for everything that goes wrong. One particularly proud tribe begins naming meals after disasters: ash bread, cave collapse soup, and the ever-popular oops stew. Still, it works. The fire has changed them. They're smarter, warmer, healthier, and more than anything, they're becoming curious. They've started asking questions, not just about fire, but about stars, seasons, why deer run faster than toddlers, and why bark doesn't taste as good as it looks. They wonder where fire came from, and sometimes their stories sound a little too close to the truth. A boy sits by the fire one night and says, "I think the stars are God's cooking fires." His mother nods. Then the moon is a spilled bowl of porridge. You decide not to correct them. Meanwhile, your fellow Titans, they're quiet. Most of them are still licking their wounds from the last great war. You're the only one who stuck your neck out, and they're not exactly lining up to help. Prometheus sends a dream message once, something vague about thinking of you, and a drawing of what might be a cat or a mountain. You're not comforted. Olympus is also simmering. Not in a boil-over way yet, but definitely a low, resentful bubble. The gods are watching humans a little too closely. Their divine noses twitch every time someone invents a new stew or organizes a cooking competition. And you, immobile titan, inventor of mortal Michelin stars, are starting to regret your second gift. Not the fire, the tips. You could have just handed them the flame and left it at that, but no. You had to tell them how to use it, how to boil, roast, reduce. You couldn't resist. You were helpful. You were kind. You were frankly a bit of a show-off, and now the gods are annoyed that mortals are having fun without divine supervision. There's a moment around Eagle Attack number 400 and something, where you start to wonder if maybe Zeus was right. Maybe fire should have come with rules, warnings, or at least a pamphlet. But that thought doesn't last long. Because a girl just invented something that looks suspiciously like pita bread, and she's serving it with a dip made from mashed beans, herbs, and roasted garlic. You nearly weep. Historians still argue whether the origins of early flatbreads came from accident or design. But from your celestial vantage point, it's clear. Mortals don't just want to survive. They want flavor. They want expression. The gods won't understand that. You did. And now, fire isn't just a tool, it's identity. And that, more than anything, is what's worrying Olympus. You can almost hear Zeus pacing again. You imagine him muttering about disrespect and flame control and why is my ambrosia bland compared to that wild garlic paste? You grin despite the bleeding liver. The humans are winning, not in rebellion. No one's throwing spears at the sky or chanting anti-God slogans. They're just living better. And if that's not divine, you don't know what is. Of course, there's a price. There always is. Zeus doesn't forgive easily, and you can feel it coming. A shift in the atmosphere. Not thunder, not yet. But tension. He's planning something. You'd brace yourself, but, well, chains, so you breathe. You watch, you wait, and you silently root for the girl with the flatbread. She's about to discover spices. You're staring at the sky again. Part boredom, part habit. When you smell something different in the wind. Not roasted roots, not wild herbs. Something heavier. Smoke. And not the gentle dancing kind that curls from campfires and makes things taste better than they should. This smoke is thick, grumpy, suspiciously vengeful. Uh-oh, the eagle hasn't even arrived yet. You know something's wrong when you start missing the bird. Then it happens. From somewhere on Olympus, probably Zeus's platinum-plated sulking balcony, a strike of lightning cracks the sky in half. No build-up, no cloud theatrics. Just boom. Immediate, unapologetic. The kind of lightning that says, I'm not angry, just disappointed, and also definitely angry. You squint through the haze. Below, a forest ignites, not all of it, just enough to get the humans' attention. They scatter, grab children, drop cooking pots. One man tries to rescue a basket of still rising dough, and honestly, you respect the dedication. You wince. This isn't an accident. Zeus has entered the chat. The fire wasn't enough, the cooking wasn't enough. Now, apparently, it's time for punishment. Or, at the very least, a stern reminder of who's in charge. Because the humans are growing bold. They're making tools. They're drying meats to last through winter. One community even built a stone structure to keep the wind off their fire. Zeus interprets that as architectural sass. So, he sends a storm, and not just any storm, a howler. Winds that knock down shelters. Rain that hisses in the fires like a furious snake. The humans fight back with furs and rocks, but the message is clear. Remember who owns the sky. You watch helplessly, shackled to your eternal outpost. The eagle arrives late, wet and grumpy. It does its job with minimal enthusiasm, pecking at your side while muttering, you imagine, about poor working conditions. But your attention isn't on the bird, it's on the people. They're scared, shaken, but not broken. Once the storm passes, and Zeus presumably has had his dramatic moment, they gather again. They mourn the damaged homes, they hug their children, and then they relight the fire with damp wood in soggy pits. Using a few barely smoldering embers, they protect it in carved-out stones. It takes hours, maybe longer, but eventually the flame returns. Small, steady, stubborn. You could cry. Historians still argue whether fire preservation techniques emerged naturally through trial and error, or if early humans developed communal fire tenders out of spiritual reverence. But watching from your windswept cliff, the answer seems obvious. They guard the fire because it's theirs. A symbol, a tool, a comfort, and a middle finger to the thunder god. Zeus notices, of course. But for now, he backs off. Maybe he's sulking. Maybe he's planning the next act. Or maybe, deep down, even he realizes he can't smite the entire human race just because someone made a really good roasted yam. Still, you know this isn't over. The gods aren't done meddling. You shift on your rock, wincing as the chains rattle. Your liver's halfway grown back and the eagle has flown off to complain to HR. You're alone again, and you start thinking, maybe humans need more than fire. They need resilience. They already have it, of course, but it wouldn't hurt to add something. A small idea, a seed of rebellion. Not rage, not war, just independence. Quiet and warm and eternal, like the fire they now protect. But how? You can't exactly drop hints from a rock. You close your eyes. Focus. Whisper. And somewhere, in the mind of a young woman huddled under a tree, a spark flickers. A vision, a thought. Maybe we should dig a pit, line it with stones, cover it from the rain. The fire will last longer that way. And just like that, the fire gets smarter. You grin. Zeus may throw lightning, but the humans? They're learning to throw shade, and also cook during thunderstorms, which, let's face it, is wildly impressive. You don't know how many eagles it's been. At some point, you stopped counting days and started counting recipes. Your current favorite is roasted root mash with a side of something that might be fermented goat milk. It sounds terrible. You'd try it anyway. The eagle's back again. A little ahead of schedule today. Great. You grunt as it settles in, its wings stirring the thin air around your prison rock. It has no manners. None. You've nicknamed this one Kevin because it always arrives with a smug screech and a look that says, "Oh, you again? Fine. Take what you came for, Kevin." While Kevin does his unpleasant work, you turn your mind to the mortal world, your one escape. And what you see makes your jaw go slack, well, figuratively. Hard to do much jaw-dropping when you're half-eaten. Humans are forging tools now. Bronze glints under the sun. Not much, not perfect, but it's metal. Shaped with heat and purpose. Some clever soul combined fire, stone, and a decent hammer, and made something sharper than a bone. You feel a mix of awe and guilt bloom in your immortal chest. Fire forged that. You gave them fire, and now they're forging civilization. Someone's even using metal to make a pot. A pot. Not just for show, for cooking. You see it bubbling away over the fire, steam rising with the smell of boiled barley and wild greens. One child drops a pebble in it and solemnly declares it rock stew. You're torn between admiration and concern. Historians still argue whether the Bronze Age began with accidental smelting or with intentional experimentation. But the mortals you're watching, they meant this. Fire as a forge, fire as a force, fire as independence. And Zeus knows. Oh, he definitely knows. You feel it before you see it, that tightness in the air, that prickling sensation on your immortal skin. The way even the eagle suddenly flaps off mid-bite, squawking something that sounds like, "Nope, not today." Then the sky darkens. Zeus is back, but this time he's not targeting humans. He's targeting you. You see him before you hear him. A shimmer in the air, a swirl of thunderclouds wrapped in designer lightning. His sandals touch down like judgment itself. His cloak snaps in the wind like a drama teacher entering stage left. He's not holding a thunderbolt, but you know him well enough to see the one in his voice. "So," he says, arms crossed, "still enjoying your view?" You don't reply. You can't, not with dignity anyway. You're chained to a rock and leaking slightly. He paces slowly around you, inspecting the setup he ordered. It's a good job. Hephaestus really outdid himself with these chains. Etched, humming, vaguely smug. "Let me guess," Zeus sneers. "They're making stew again." You blink. "That's what you chose?" he continues. "Immortal rebellion? Divine defiance? Over soup?" You almost laugh, but it hurts. He keeps pacing. "You've made them believe they don't need us," he says. And they're not entirely wrong. That's the worst part. They think fire makes them clever. That cooking makes them civilized. That not being struck by lightning means they're doing fine. You raise one eyebrow. They are doing fine. Zeus stops, stares at you. Then he does something you never expected. He sighs, not dramatically, not stormily, just sighs. You blink again, confused. "I didn't want to do this," he says, "but you've left me no choice." And with a flick of his hand, he summons it. The box. Not just any box. A gift box. wrapped in cosmic ribbon, etched with divine runes, and absolutely humming with bad idea energy. You recognize it immediately. Pandora, you groan. Zeus smiles. If fire made them too bold, let curiosity humble them. He vanishes. Just like that. And the box remains, far below you, already en route to the humans, carried by winds and whispers and one very confused delivery eagle. You can't stop it. All you can do is watch and silently curse your impulse to explain boiling. Because Zeus isn't punishing them for the fire. He's punishing them for the confidence it brought. The moment Pandora steps into the world, you feel it like a change in barometric pressure. Quiet, elegant, and laced with trouble. She doesn't arrive like a storm. No lightning, no smoke, just the soft crunch of footfall on dry grass and the faint gleam of gold-stitched robes. She smiles. Curious, polite, dangerous in the most unassuming way. The mortals gather around her like moths to, well, you. Once. Before the eagle. She speaks gently. She laughs easily. She's beautiful because of course she is. Hephaestus made her by hand, every line of her crafted to charm. She even smells like something between honey and wet clay, which is honestly a power move. And in her hands, the box. It's small, ornate, innocent looking, and it hums like a restrained thunderstorm. You watch all of this from your rock, chains digging deeper as you squint down at the scene. You know that box. You remember the argument Zeus gave for it. It's just a symbolic gesture, he'd claimed. Just a little reminder that mortals need us. Yeah, right. That box contains everything. All the things the humans haven't invented yet. Sickness, grief, biting insects, door-to-door flute salesmen. The whole divine laundry list of, you thought it was going too well, didn't you? And you can't stop it. You shout, but there's no voice. You strain against the chains, but they only tighten, groaning like overworked metaphors. All you can do is watch. Pandora walks among the people. She shares stories. She compliments their cooking. She adds wild berries to a stew and becomes the toast of the campfire circuit. Then one night she sits alone by the fire. She looks at the box. She taps it. Just once. And you feel the latch tremble open. It starts slowly, just a breath. A hiss of air like the first sigh of a long-held curse. Then a whisper. Then a wail. From the box, suffering. Not in waves, not all at once. It creeps, it oozes. The first man wakes up with aching joints. A woman loses her taste for food. A child coughs and cannot stop. The fire burns, but it no longer comforts. It merely survives. And the humans don't understand. They cry. They scream. They dig holes and bury the sick, sometimes with their cooking pots, hoping to keep them warm in death. You feel the guilt settle into your immortal marrow. It's your fire that brought them this far, and it's your fire they now sit beside, shivering in confusion, asking what they did wrong. But then the box rattles again. Pandora, already weeping, turns to flee, but stops. A sound. Not a scream this time. Not a hiss. A hum. She looks back. From the shadows of that cursed vessel, something small and bright floats upward. Hope. Tiny, glowing, delicate as ash on a breeze. It drifts above the box, flutters toward the fire, and settles there like a flame deciding to stay. You feel it, the shift. The mortals stop crying, they breathe. They watch the flame. And then, one by one, they start again. Stir the pot, boil the herbs, rebuild what was lost. Hope is not a cure, but it is fuel. They may now suffer, but they still cook. A man limps to the fire with a bowl. He says, "This soup's going to fix nothing, but it's going to feel like it does." A woman nods. She drops a handful of bitter greens into the pot, not for flavor, but for remembering. They eat together. And something inside you, something broken by Zeus's punishment, by the endless eagle, by watching the flame become a weapon, heals. Historians still argue whether Pandora's box was ever meant to contain hope, or whether hope was its own trick, a final cruelty wrapped in sweetness. But you, from your cliff of chains and consequence, don't care what they argue. You know what you saw. You know what humans chose. They didn't give up. They cooked through sorrow. They seasoned their grief. They kept the fire alive. You exhale. A long, slow breath that whistles past the corners of eternity. Kevin lands on your chest with his usual lack of grace. You stare at him. He stares back. And you say calmly, "They still have the fire?" Kevin squawks in confusion. You smile. Because even in pain, even in defeat, even with your liver half-eaten and your legacy chewed upon, you gave them fire, and they turned it into resilience. The eagle pecks away, but your mind drifts, carried on winds warmer than the one slicing past your cliff. You watch as the humans adapt. They don't just light fires anymore, they tend to them, build shelters around them, feed them like pets or elders. In the bitter seasons, fire becomes a lifeline. In the fertile seasons, it becomes a celebration. You marvel at their stubbornness. Even with disease, death, and disappointment, let loose from that infernal box, they press forward. And they keep cooking. They roast, they bake, they stew, they dry, they ferment things they absolutely should not ferment. But you can't fault their ambition. A tribe on a high plateau invents a kind of sour milk soup that smells like fear and tastes like history. They love it. One child names it sky broth. No one argues. Meanwhile, down near a saltwater marsh, another group accidentally invents the first seafood stew. Crabs, clams, seaweed, and a few rocks for texture. A grandmother adds a wild onion and forever ruins the concept of simple fare. You admire her deeply. Still, with every new creation, a pattern emerges. Humans begin to attach memory to meals. You see them make dishes to remember the dead, to honor births, to mark the moon's strange moods. Cooking is no longer just survival, it's storytelling, a way to pass down more than fire. To pass down meaning, and the fire, it listens. The gods predictably are not impressed. On Olympus, Zeus scoffs over his ambrosia. They cry and stew their vegetables in the same breath, he mutters. Is that divine? Hermes, whose mortal gossip addiction is now completely out of hand, nods enthusiastically. Yeah, it kind of is. Aphrodite, lounging in a drift of silk, tastes a drop of mortal honey and mutters something that sounds suspiciously like, not bad. But the consensus is uneasy. The gods thought suffering would snap humans back into reverence. Instead, it made them resilient. They mourn beside the flame, and then they cook. They hold a funeral with bowls of lentils and bitter greens. Someone carves a spoon with the name of the lost one etched along the handle. It's placed beside the hearth, never used, never touched, just there. Like memory, like prayer. You feel something stir in your timeless chest. You didn't mean to start a movement, you just wanted them to be warm. But fire, once gifted, can't be ungifted. It spreads, mutates, evolves, especially in the hands of creatures as stubborn as humans. And now they're making tools to preserve fire. Small clay bowls lined with ash and ember, carried between camps like little portable miracles. You watch as one man guards a smoldering coal in his tunic for a 2-day journey. He arrives, lights a new fire. People cheer. They don't worship the coal. They hug the man. The gods wince. Historians still argue whether early fire preservation methods involved specific cultural rituals or if they were purely practical. Either way, the effect is the same. Humans are no longer dependent on luck or divine mood swings. They own their warmth. And you? You begin to hope. You picture a future with metal stoves, ceramic pots, spices from one land traded to another, recipes passed across generations like lullabies. You picture mortals feeding their sick, their old, their children, not because they have to, but because it's a way to say, you matter. And somewhere far below, a boy stirs a pot and says to no one in particular, I think fire likes when we cook. You laugh. Kevin screeches. Quiet, you say. The soup's almost done. The eagle leaves late today. Full, sluggish, maybe even thoughtful if eagles are capable of introspection. You, on the other hand, are very much deep in your feelings. Because what you're seeing now isn't just survival anymore, it's a refinement. Down in the mortals' world, a group has begun doing something truly absurd. Plating. They're arranging food on flat stones. Leaves for garnish. Tiny pools of berry paste in the middle of roasted tubers. Someone uses a bone to carve a fish into slices so thin it's basically pre-sashimi. It's ridiculous and exquisite. One person insists that placing food in a spiral shape makes it taste better. Another starts painting symbols on the side of clay bowls to mark which dish it contains. Someone adds flowers to their meal. Edible flowers. Not all of them taste good, but the aesthetic is undeniable. You beam. Cooking has become art. It's no longer just burn this until chewable. Now it's expression, emotion, subtle competition, the earliest roots of pride and presentation. You watch a young woman cook a meal for her ailing grandmother. Spiced meat, bitter herbs, and a broth that's been simmering since dawn. She serves it with both hands, eyes downcast, and waits silently as her grandmother eats. When the old woman smiles, the girl bursts into tears, and it's not just food, it's connection. You shift, chains grinding softly. It hurts less somehow. Or maybe your focus has moved so far into the world below that pain becomes background noise, like the wind, or Kevin. Speaking of whom, he's circling back already. You give him a withering look. He dives dramatically anyway. Lunchtime, his flapping seems to say. You roll your eyes. You'd love their cooking more. As he resumes his eternal buffet, your attention drifts again to a new innovation. A pot, but not just any pot. A sealed, lidded pot. It's designed to trap steam. The inventor is unaware they've just created the proto-pressure cooker, but their stew is incredible. Softer roots, melted fat, aroma so potent it makes the neighboring tribe show up uninvited. Naturally, the tribes argue. Then, another innovation. Sharing. They invite the strangers to eat. Sit down. Break the smoky, rosemary-laced bread together. And just like that, food becomes diplomacy. Historians still argue whether ancient cooking led directly to trade and peacemaking, or whether it simply facilitated coexistence. You're no scholar, but from this rock, it's obvious. Cooking teaches empathy. You don't share stew with someone you plan to stab. Or if you do, you at least wait until dessert. The gods, meanwhile, are beginning to panic. They don't show it, of course. They host meetings in their white marble halls, sipping cloud nectar and pretending not to care. But you hear the whispers. They made a dumpling, Hera says one day, alarmed. With filling, adds Demeter, who's half impressed and half offended. Even Apollo raises an eyebrow. They sang in harmony while they cooked. Zeus grumbles. They're getting uppity. Hermes sighs. They're just getting good at dinner. That phrase echoes in your head. Good at dinner. What a legacy. You think back to when you first handed over the flame. Nervous, reckless, hiding it in a fennel stalk like contraband. You had no idea they'd do this much with it. That they'd take heat and hunger and turn it into community. And yet, here they are. Boiling, baking, flavoring, fermenting. Sharing it all beside the warmth you gave them. Not as gods, not as rulers, just as people. They don't thank you by name. They don't know your story, but they keep the fire alive. And in a way, that's all the gratitude you need. Kevin burps. You sigh. Some part of you, deep, stubborn, still divine, hopes that one day the humans will build something more. Kitchens, maybe. Tables. Spices traded across seas you can't even imagine. And when they do, they'll still gather. Still cook. Still tell stories around a flame. Because that's the real gift, not just fire, but what they do with it. A new sound rises from below, something light, rhythmic, almost playful. Laughter. You focus your gaze. A group of humans is gathered around a fire cooking a stew that has obviously gone wrong. The smell is vivid. One person is fanning smoke with a flat rock. Another is stirring so frantically they nearly knock the pot over. But they're not upset. They're laughing. Apparently, someone mistook salt for crushed shells. The resulting flavor has been described as ocean regret, a new record in culinary disaster, and yet they're enjoying themselves. You can't help but smile, liver trauma notwithstanding. There's something deeply profound about failure that doesn't stop them. They joke about it, share the terrible stew, and someone even claims to taste potential. Liar, but it's beautiful. Failure becomes folklore. And before long, the humans develop a tradition. Cooking competitions. They gather around fires to challenge one another. Who can boil the most complex roots? Who can roast meat without burning the ends? Who can invent something new with only 3 ingredients and a stone that smells like garlic? You watch, amused and amazed. They cheer for each other. They taste and critique and improve. One group creates a dish so spicy it causes hiccups. Another develops a sweetness using dried fruit and heat. A child dips bark into honey and declares it dessert. Culinary progress, one burnt fingertip at a time. Then Hermes shows up. Oh, great! You spot him drifting down from Olympus in that annoyingly smug way he does, winged sandals fluttering, carrying a scroll and a basket of snacks he definitely didn't invent. He lands near a fire, invisible to the humans, and starts narrating. "Oh, look at that," he whispers, watching a boy drop acorn flour into hot water. Innovative, if slightly gritty. He jots it down on the scroll in divine shorthand. That's when you realize he's reporting to Olympus. The gods are now taking notes. You can almost hear them compiling a celestial cookbook. Mortals and their unlicensed use of flavor, a scandalous archive. Hermes visits more often after that, sometimes disguised as a breeze, sometimes a bird, once as an exceptionally sarcastic goat. He listens, watches, even tastes, though one stew causes him to audibly gag and curse in 7 dead languages. He returns to Olympus with tales of fennel-roasted tubers, grilled river eel, and berry root preserves stored in clay jars. You hear the whispers soon after. Maybe we underestimated the humans. Do they even need us? They're seasoning feelings now. Zeus pretends not to care, but you can feel the storm tension in the air around him. He's losing control, not because the humans rebel, but because they don't need him to create joy. And joy, it turns out, is a surprisingly rebellious act, especially when it's roasted over a fire with friends. Historians still argue whether cooking competitions in early cultures were born from necessity, celebration, or sheer boredom. But you know better. You've seen it. Cooking became communication, and communication became culture. You shift slightly, ignoring the familiar pinch of chain and eagle beak. Kevin's back, of course. He's late and grumpy. You try to block him out and focus instead on the fires below. Someone is wrapping leaves around tubers before tossing them into the coals. Another gently roasts seeds until they pop. A woman is humming, a lullaby maybe, or a recipe turned into song. Then, from the corner of your awareness, laughter again. But it's divine. Hermes. You glance sideways and spot him reclining on a nearby cloud, feet up, smirking. Hope you're proud of yourself, he says, tearing a piece of mortal flatbread in half and dipping it into something oily and fragrant. They made olive oil before temples. You flipped the order. You say nothing. He continues, mouth half full. Zeus is furious. He wanted worship. They gave him seasoning. You offer a tired smile. Tastes better. He laughs, tips an imaginary hat, and vanishes. And you are left again with the sound of crackling fires, bubbling pots, and mortals turning survival into celebration. They still don't say your name, but they say thanks with every meal. Sometimes you imagine the box again. Pandora's box, or jar, or amphora, whatever shape mortals gave it after stories wore its edges smooth. You picture it tucked away in some old cave now, forgotten by most, feared by a few, mythologized into bedtime cautionary tales. But here's the part no one talks about. The box stayed open. Hope didn't close the lid. It just settled in. And somehow, even in the shadows that spilled out, sorrow, illness, uncertainty, the humans kept cooking. That's what you're watching now. A storm has torn through a coastal camp. Tents are shredded, ashes washed away. A few bowls float mournfully in the flooded earth. But the fire? It's been restarted. One ember survived, buried in the protective hollow of a stone bowl. A boy, barely more than a toddler, guarded it under his robe, pressed close to his chest. Now a woman, his mother maybe, nurses it back to life with dried moss, whispers, and patience. She fans it until it glows. Then the cooking begins. A weak stew, a small one, just roots and bitter herbs. But it bubbles. It feeds them. And you, still bound to your ridiculous poetic punishment rock, feel a warmth that has nothing to do with liver regeneration. Because that's what it always comes down to. Not power, not punishment, persistence. Humans fail constantly. Their first pantries were just hollowed out rocks. Their first seasoning? Dirt they hoped was salty. But every time the world said no, they said, fine, but after dinner. And now, because of a titan with boundary issues and a fennel stalk, they've built something that even Zeus couldn't burn down. Routine. Which, ironically, is kind of divine. Then, of course, Zeus sends Pandora, a second wave, a second story. But this time, it's different. Pandora doesn't just bring the box, she brings questions. You see her walking village to village, welcomed more out of politeness than awe. No one really trusts divine gifts anymore, but they're too nice to say so. She listens, watches, observes the cooking rituals, and eventually she joins in. She learns to cook. It's unexpected and kind of brilliant. At first, she's awful, burns everything, forgets ingredients, adds raw garlic like it's a dare. But she laughs at herself, tries again. Soon she's asking questions. What if we wrapped meat in leaves? What if you soak the roots first? What if this bitter green just needs lemon juice, whatever that is? She becomes one of them. And in doing so, Pandora becomes less of a warning and more of a witness. She starts recording recipes, not on scrolls, not in clay, but in memory. She travels and shares them. She turns disaster into connection. Historians still argue whether Pandora was villain, victim, or metaphor, but down there among the stews and smoke, she becomes a cookbook. Her story changes, and so does yours. Your name, once whispered around fires, fades, but the gesture remains. Someone draws your shape in the ashes of a hearth. Another carves a fennel stalk and hangs it above their cookpot. A child says, "This stew is from the stars," and no one corrects them. You feel it all, every bite, every ritual. Every time someone stirs and says, "It needs something," you are the unspoken name in every just a little longer. And the gods, they've stopped fighting it. Not because they gave in, but because they started eating. Apollo tries grilled fish and won't shut up about balanced char. Hera develops a mild obsession with honey cakes. Ares, of all gods, starts attending mortal feasts in disguise just to eat fire-roasted lamb with cumin and not get punched in the ego for once. Even Zeus, in his tempestuous sulking, has secretly tasted mortal wine and grunted approval. You know, you see them, and you smile, even as Kevin returns, pecking dutifully. Because Olympus might have sent suffering, but mortals sent it back with seasoning. You no longer remember the exact day Zeus chained you here. Not because of trauma or even the daily eagle buffet, which, by the way, Kevin has gotten far too comfortable with. No, it's because time has softened, blurred. You measure it now not in days or screams or wing flaps, but in recipes. Down below, a mortar and pestle rhythm echoes like a drum beat. One group has discovered spices, real ones, bark and seed and root, crushed together into fragrant powders. The smell drifts all the way up the mountain on a wind that seems a little less cruel than usual. You inhale. It smells like ambition and maybe coriander. The woman making the spice mix hums as she works. Her child watches with wide eyes. Later, he'll pass that blend to someone else who will tweak it, who will forget one ingredient and accidentally invent something new. That's how humans work. They improvise. You watch as fermented grains become drink. Clay ovens appear. Hot domes where flatbread puffs up like tiny edible pillows. Someone pours honey over everything and calls it breakfast. Another starts fermenting cabbage, completely unaware that they're creating future culinary debates that will last centuries. And the best part? They're doing it without divine help. There's no God guiding their hand, no glowing finger from Olympus tapping the edge of a pot and whispering, "Try more time." This is all them. And that's the quiet revolution, isn't it? They've stopped waiting for miracles. They've started trusting each other. The gods don't like this. Zeus especially. Oh, he doesn't say it. Not directly, but his thunder is sulkier. His lightning less precise. One afternoon he scorches a field on accident, and the mortals just rebuild and plant spices there. Petty vengeance is no match for paprika. Hermes visits again, this time perching beside your rock, dangling his legs like a bored child. "They're getting very good at dumplings," he says, popping one into his mouth. "I mean, disturbingly good." You grunt. "They've also started pickling things." "Did you mean for that to happen?" You blink. "Pickling?" "Yeah," he says. "Like preserving food with vinegar and thyme instead of, prayer." You close your eyes, smiling faintly. "Sounds divine." He chuckles. "Zeus doesn't think so. Zeus doesn't salt his soup." "True." And then Hermes, surprisingly gentle, leans in. "You know they still talk about you, right? Not your name. Not like Prometheus, the Titan, the rock guy. But they tell stories. About a stranger with fire in his hands. About someone who showed them how to keep warm, how to keep fed, how to keep going. You say nothing, but your chest feels warmer than usual." Kevin lands with a disgruntled flap. "Oh, good," Hermes mutters, standing. Kevin's early. The eagle screeches indignantly. Hermes winks at you and vanishes, leaving behind only the faint smell of dumplings and wing oil. And you? You watch the fires, the mortals, the miracles. They've made spoons out of bone and ladles from shell. They've created broths that heal, soups that speak of seasons, meals so good they're remembered in lullabies. Historians, those future voices, will argue over where civilization began. Some will point to tools, others to cities. But you know better. It began at the hearth. When someone lit a fire not just to survive, but to feed someone else. When the smell of stew drew people close, even in grief. When someone said, "Stay, eat, you're not alone." It began there, with fire, with flavor, with hope, and with a very patient Titan who made the mistake of giving out both without asking permission. The stars above you have shifted. Again, they do that. Not for you, your view never changes, but for the mortals. For their calendars, for their harvests, for their soft, hopeful attempts at understanding the sky. They've started naming constellations now, Some for animals, some for gods, and this is new, one that looks suspiciously like a fennel stalk. You blink. Maybe it's coincidence, maybe not. You're watching a group below that has taken cooking to another level. They've started recording it, not in stone or song this time, but on stretched hides. Illustrated recipes with adorable stick figures roasting fish and waving herbs around like divine wands. One image looks like someone seasoning the sky. You feel oddly flattered. But this, you realize, is the final gift fire has given them. Memory. Not just survival, not just flavor, but preservation. They don't need the gods to remember anymore. They write things down. They tell each other stories. They whisper old recipes into young ears. They build culture out of steam and salt and time. And when tragedy strikes, as it always does, they return to the fire. A woman kneels beside it after losing her brother. She's silent for hours, then she adds roots to the pot, stirring slowly, quietly. The others join her one by one. They cook, they cry, they eat. There are no prayers, no sacrifices, just a meal that says, "We're still here." Zeus sees it. You feel him watching, just beyond the clouds, crackling faintly, and then nothing. He doesn't strike. He doesn't speak. The rebellion he feared wasn't a war, it was comfort. Shared freely, without fear? Maybe that's what he never understood. You feel the chains tremble. Not loosen, just shudder. Like they know they've lost their meaning. Kevin arrives for the final time today. He lands slower than usual, plucks at your side with something bordering on routine. You almost say goodbye to him. Almost. The sun sets. Below, the mortals light hundreds of fires, some for warmth, some for cooking, some just because fire is beautiful. And in those flames, they carry your story forward, not by name, not by temple, but by ritual. You, the bound titan, the bleeding fool, the unwanted benefactor, you've become tradition, and they, the creatures you once pitied, have become creators. You close your eyes, you hear the bubbling of stew, the crackle of kindling, the sound of hope still glowing in the coals, and for the first time in a very, very long while, you rest. Word count 1044. Wind down 300 words. And now the fire's dim. The pots are cleaned. The embers hiss gently as a breeze slips through the ashes, soft and unhurried. Somewhere far below, the last spoon of the night is set down beside a bowl, and the final log is coaxed to sleep under a bed of coals. The world for this moment exhales. Prometheus still rests upon his rock, watching, listening, no longer resisting. The eagle has gone quiet, its wings folded beneath the stars. The chains remain, but even they seem less cruel now, less heavy, because fire lives on. And with it, the memory of why he gave it. The humans sleep now, bellies full, wrapped in stories and the scent of slow-roasted roots. Their dreams flicker like flame, faint, warm, impossibly stubborn. And you're floating gently beside them, cradled by a tale older than memory. One where mistakes became meals, punishments became recipes, and rebellion tasted faintly of salt and honey. So let your breath slow. Let the weight of the day melt like snow beside the hearth. The world can wait. Right now, there's only you, the stars, and the fire that never went out.